Am I wrong for wanting to sleep without my husband constantly interrupting me? The day I locked my bedroom door against my own husband was the day I realized our marriage had a problem I never saw coming. I never thought I would become the kind of wife who barricades herself in the bedroom, but after 6 months of sleep deprivation, I was desperate. So I installed the lock at 3 in the morning while he slept peacefully beside me, never imagining how much chaos such a small piece of hardware would create in our lives. My hands trembled as I carefully aligned the mechanism with the door frame, using my phone's flashlight to see in the darkness. The small screwdriver felt heavy in my palm, and every tiny sound made me freeze, terrified I would wake him. But he slept on, his breathing deep and even, completely unaware that his wife was taking what felt like a monumental step in their marriage. I had ordered the lock 3 days earlier, after yet another morning of interrupted sleep had left me in tears. It was not a dramatic purchase, just a simple privacy lock from an online retailer, the kind you might put on any interior door. But as I tightened the final screw and tested the mechanism with a soft click, it felt like I was building a wall between us. The irony was not lost on me. Here I was, a woman who 6 years ago had stood at an altar and promised to share everything with this man, and now I was literally locking him out of our bedroom. But I was so tired, not just physically tired, though that was certainly part of it. I was tired of the constant interruptions, tired of explaining myself, tired of starting every day already frustrated and irritated. My body ached from the chronic pain that plagued me daily, and the lack of proper sleep only made it worse. Our marriage had not always been like this. In the beginning, we had been perfectly in sync. We would stay up late talking, laughing, making plans for our future. We would wake up together, have breakfast together, start our days as a team. But then the accident happened, and everything changed. The car crash 2 years ago had not killed me, but sometimes I wondered if it might have been easier if it had. That sounds dark, I know, but chronic pain has a way of making you think terrible things. The impact had damaged nerves in my spine, leaving me with constant discomfort that ranged from a dull ache to sharp stabbing sensations that took my breath away. Sleep became my enemy. If I lay down before my body was ready, before exhaustion completely overwhelmed the pain, I would just lie there in the darkness, every nerve screaming. So my bedtime crept later and later. Midnight became 1 in the morning, which became 2, then 3, then 4. Some nights I did not close my eyes until the sun was already rising. My husband tried to understand at first. He really did. He would stay up with me sometimes, keeping me company during those long, painful nights. But he had a job, responsibilities, a normal life that required normal sleep hours. Eventually, he started going to bed at reasonable times, and I would remain awake, alone with my pain and the glow of the television. The problem started about 6 months ago. He began coming into the bedroom while I was sleeping, always with some trivial reason. Did I want him to pick up groceries? What should we have for dinner? Did I see that funny video he sent me? Each interruption was innocent enough on its own, but they were constant, relentless. At first, I tried to be understanding. Maybe he missed me, missed the connection we used to have. Maybe he was just being thoughtful, checking on me. But as the interruptions continued, as my sleep became more and more fractured, my patience wore thin. I tried talking to him about it, multiple times. I explained that I needed those morning hours to sleep, that the interruptions were affecting my health, my mood, my ability to function. He would nod, agree, promise to be more considerate. And then the next morning, he would walk in again, asking if I had seen his favorite coffee mug. The robot vacuum incident was the final straw. I had been asleep for maybe 3 hours when I heard our bedroom door open. Through my haze of exhaustion, I assumed he was just passing through, maybe grabbing something he forgot. But then I heard the familiar beep of the vacuum starting up, followed by its aggressive roar as it began its cleaning cycle. I shot up in bed, my vision blurry, my head pounding. The vacuum banged into the dresser, ricocheted off the nightstand, and proceeded to methodically cover every inch of our bedroom floor. I looked at the doorway and saw him standing there, watching. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice hoarse from sleep. "The floor needed vacuuming," he said simply, as if this was a perfectly reasonable explanation for sending a loud machine into a room where his wife was clearly sleeping. I was asleep. "Well, you have been asleep for hours already. I thought you would be up soon." Something inside me broke in that moment. Not dramatically, not with yelling or throwing things. It was quieter than that. It was the sound of the last thread of my patience snapping, almost inaudibly, but completely. That night, I ordered the lock. The first morning after I installed it, I felt like a criminal. I heard him get up at his usual time, heard him shuffle around getting ready for his day. My heart pounded as I listened to his footsteps approach the bedroom door. The handle turned, or tried to. There was a pause. Then the sound of the handle being jiggled more forcefully. Then silence. I held my breath, waiting. Part of me expected him to knock, to call out, to demand an explanation, but he did not. After a moment, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. For the first time in months, I slept until noon without a single interruption. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, I felt more rested than I had in ages. My husband was in the living room, working on his laptop. He looked up when I entered. "You locked the door," he said. It was not a question. "Yes." "Why?" I sat down across from him, trying to organize my thoughts. "Because I asked you to stop interrupting my sleep, and you did not stop. Because I need those hours to rest. Because I was going insane from being woken up constantly." He frowned. frowned, his expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. I was not trying to wake you up. I was just checking on you, or asking quick questions. It is not a big deal. It is a big deal to me, I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. When you have had 3 hours of sleep and someone keeps coming in every 20 minutes, it is impossible to get proper rest. I explained this to you multiple times. So your solution is to lock me out of our own bedroom? It is my solution to getting the sleep I desperately need. We sat in silence for a long moment. I could see him processing, trying to decide if he was angry, hurt, or both. Finally, he shook his head and went back to his laptop, effectively ending the conversation. The next few days were tense. We spoke to each other, but there was a coolness that had not been there before. Every night, after he went to bed, I would quietly engage the lock. Every morning, I would sleep undisturbed until my body decided it was time to wake up. And every day, the distance between us seemed to grow a little wider. Our roommate, who rented the spare bedroom, noticed the change. She pulled me aside one afternoon while my husband was out running errands. "Is everything okay between you two?" she asked, her voice gentle with concern. I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "We are having some disagreements about sleep schedules and boundaries." She nodded slowly. "I have noticed he seems frustrated lately, and I heard him trying to open the bedroom door yesterday morning." Heat rushed to my face. Of course she had heard. Our house was not that big, and the sound of someone repeatedly turning a locked door handle was not exactly subtle. "I installed a lock," I admitted. "He keeps interrupting my sleep, and I needed it to stop." She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Can I offer an observation? Not as judgment, just as someone who lives here and sees things?" I nodded, bracing myself. "I think he misses you," she said softly. "You two used to be together all the time, doing things, talking, laughing. Now you are on completely opposite schedules. He is up and active while you are asleep, and by the time you wake up, half the day is gone. Maybe the interruptions are not about bothering you. Maybe they are about trying to connect with you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to argue, to defend my position, to explain that we spent plenty of time together in the afternoons and evenings. But the truth was, it was not the same. The easy intimacy we once had, the natural flow of our days together, had been disrupted by my chaotic sleep schedule and the pain that drove it. That evening, after my husband went to bed, I sat in the living room instead of immediately following to lock the door. I thought about our marriage, about the woman I had been before the accident and the woman I had become after. I thought about my husband, trying to navigate life with a wife whose body had betrayed her, whose pain had reshaped both of our lives in ways neither of us had anticipated. I thought about the lock. It had solved one problem but created another. Yes, I was sleeping better. Yes, I was less irritated during the day. But I had also created a physical barrier between us, a tangible symbol of the growing emotional distance. Around 2 in the morning, I finally went to bed. My husband was deeply asleep, his face peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, my hand hovering over the lock. Then I closed the door and left it unlocked. The next morning, I was awakened by the sound of the door opening. I tensed, preparing for another interruption, another trivial question or comment. But instead, my husband just stood in the doorway, looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. "I am sorry," he said quietly. I blinked, still foggy from sleep. "What?" "I am sorry for not taking your sleep seriously, for not respecting your boundaries, for sending the vacuum in while you were sleeping." He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. "I think I was trying to force things back to how they used to be, when we were on the same schedule, doing everything together. I miss that. I miss you." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I miss you too, and I miss the way things used to be, but my body does not work the same way anymore. I cannot just go to bed at normal times without lying awake in pain for hours." He nodded, stepping into the room and sitting on the edge of the bed. "I know, and I should have been more understanding about that. I just felt like I was losing you, and I did not know how to stop it from happening." "You are not losing me," I said, reaching for his hand. "But we need to find a way to make this work. I need sleep, real, uninterrupted sleep, and you need to feel connected to me. Those things do not have to be mutually exclusive." We talked for over an hour that morning. Really talked, maybe for the first time since the accident. We discussed boundaries, schedules, ways to stay connected despite our different sleep patterns. He agreed to stop interrupting my sleep unless there was a genuine emergency. I agreed to make more effort to spend quality time with him during my waking hours, even if it meant occasionally pushing through my exhaustion. We also talked about the lock. Part of me wanted to remove it immediately, to show him I trusted him to respect my boundaries. But another part of me recognized that the lock represented something important, my right to protect my own health and well-being, even within my marriage. In the end, we agreed to keep the lock but establish when it would and would not be used. If I locked the door, he would respect it and not try to disturb me for any non-emergency reason. If the door was unlocked, he was welcome to come and go as needed, but would be mindful of whether I was sleeping. It was not a perfect solution. Our life together was never going to return to exactly what it had been before the accident, but it was a compromise, a way forward that acknowledged both of our needs. The first few weeks of our new arrangement had their challenges. Old habits die hard, and there were times when he forgot and started to come into the room while I was sleeping, only to catch himself and back out quietly. There were times when my pain was so bad that I locked the door for days on end, and I could sense his hurt and frustration even though he did not voice it. But slowly, things improved. He started leaving me little notes instead of interrupting my sleep, messages I would find when I woke up. Nothing profound, just small thoughts or questions that could wait for my reply. Thinking about trying that new restaurant tonight. Let me know if you are interested. Saw a funny meme that reminded me of you. It is on my phone when you are up. I made an effort to be more present during my waking hours. Instead of immediately retreating to my computer or phone after getting up, I would seek him out, ask about his morning, share space with him even if we were each doing our own thing. We started having designated couple time in the late afternoon, a few hours where we would watch a show together, cook dinner together, or just talk. Our roommate noticed the change. "You two seem better," she commented one evening as the three of us sat in the living room after dinner. My husband and I exchanged a glance. "We are working on it," I said. "Working on it is good," she replied with a knowing smile. "Better than not working on it." 6 months after I installed the lock, my husband suggested we try couples counseling. I was surprised by the suggestion, but I agreed. We found a therapist who specialized in chronic illness and its impact on relationships. During our sessions, we unpacked layers of resentment, fear, and grief that had been building since my accident. I learned that my husband felt helpless watching me suffer, that his constant interruptions were partly motivated by a need to check that I was okay, to assure himself that I was still there, still his wife, not lost completely to sleep and pain. He learned that my need for boundaries was not rejection, that protecting my sleep was not about pushing him away, but about basic survival. We worked on communication, on expressing needs and fears without blame or defensiveness. We learned to validate each other's experiences, even when we did not fully understand them. It was hard work, the kind of emotional labor that left us both exhausted after each session, but it was worth it. My sleep schedule never returned to normal. The pain never went away. Some mornings I still locked the bedroom door, and some mornings I woke up to find him standing in the doorway, watching me sleep with an expression of such tender concern that it made my heart ache. But we adapted. We found new rhythms, new ways of being together that accommodated my limitations without completely sacrificing his needs. We learned that marriage is not about maintaining the same patterns forever, but about being willing to change and grow, even when that growth is painful and difficult. The lock is still on our bedroom door. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I do not, but its presence no longer feels like a wall between us. Instead, it is a tool, a way for me to communicate my needs without words, a physical manifestation of the boundaries we have learned to respect. People often ask me if I regret installing that lock, if I feel guilty about creating that barrier. The truth is complicated. I wish the lock had never been necessary. I wish my body worked the way it used to, wish my sleep schedule was normal, wish I did not have to choose between rest and accessibility. But given the circumstances, given the choice between protecting my health or maintaining an illusion of normalcy, I would install that lock again. Because here is what I learned through all of this. Boundaries are not betrayals. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your relationship is to be honest about what you need, even when that honesty is uncomfortable or difficult. My marriage is not perfect. Some days are harder than others. Some mornings I still wake up irritated, and some evenings my husband still looks at me with a sadness that speaks to all the normal experiences my pain has stolen from us. But we are still here, still together, still figuring it out one day at a time. And every night, when I close that bedroom door, whether I lock it or leave it open, I know that behind it waits a man who loves me enough to try to understand, even when understanding is hard. That has to count for something. Maybe it counts for everything.